This video will help you decide whether Anno 1800 is the right game for you. We'll start with a 60-second, too long didn't read summary to see if the game grabs your attention. If you're still intrigued after that, we'll take a detailed look at what you actually do in the game, while also reviewing the DLC options and whether you can pick it up with a nice discount. To provide context, I'll reference other games you may have already played throughout the video, and I guarantee that by the end of the video, you'll be able to make an informed decision. Please remember, if you do get value out of the video, give it a like and perhaps leave a comment, as that makes a huge difference to the channel. And if you like strategy games in general, feel free to check out my other videos too. And if you like those, consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon to be notified about future content. In Anno 1800, you build housing, streets and factories so your workers can produce goods that are primarily used to fulfill those workers' needs. Doing that will attract even more workers and increase the amount of tax they're willing to pay. Once you're turning a profit, you could invest in your military to conquer your opponents, or buy out their assets piece by piece, or both. You start on one island with farmers who can only make basic goods, so you must expand your population and production in a race to settle other islands and eventually the new world. Once each farmer's house has enough of its needs fulfilled, it can be upgraded to the next level of worker, who is more demanding, but can produce more valuable goods, which makes them happy, so you can upgrade them again, with 5 worker tiers in total. If you enjoy efficient production chains, identifying bottlenecks, and creating pretty cities with gorgeous visuals, it's worth taking a closer look at Anno 1800. If you like the sound of that so far, grab a drink and get comfortable as we look through the detail of what you actually do in Anno 1800 and whether it takes forever to learn. Let's start with who the game will appeal to. At its core, Anno 1800 is a complex resource management game with a ton of different resources and production lines. So if you enjoy the economic resource management element of other games, there's a lot for you to like here. There is a reasonable amount of city building and a teeny tiny amount of diplomacy, but not much in the way of warfare. So if the allure of Age of Empires style 20-minute multiplayer battles gets you going, Anno 1800 may not be right for you. But if you're more of a cities skylines player, you can make some gorgeous looking towns and cities, and even enjoy them from a first-person perspective, which is 90% awesome and 10% like being stuck in a low-poly nightmare that you can't escape from. Your first playthrough will start with the story-driven campaign, which has the tutorial built into it. It does take time to learn the game mechanics initially, but when you hit the mid to late game, you'll find that most systems are basically more of the same, so the learning curve plateaus rather quickly. With that said, frustration often led me to Google, only to find I wasn't clicking on something in the right way, but I'll include a link to my quick start guide below so you can avoid those frustrations. However, most importantly, much like Crusader Kings 3 and Total War Warhammer 3, the tutorial doesn't feel like a tutorial. You're learning with a full version of the game that could easily keep you happy for 20 hours or more. But that's enough overview. Let's dive right into the detail of what it's actually like to play Anno 1800. You start with one ship and a trading post at your first island, and some wood and money to get you started. You need to build houses and streets, but at first only a small number of farmers will actually move into the houses you've built. If you want more farmers, you'll need to attract them by fulfilling their basic needs. Farmers need a market near their home, and each market has an area of effect, so efficient placement is key. They also need enough fish and work clothes to go around, so the more farmers you have, the more fish and clothes you need to produce. Provide all of these things to each house, and they will eventually fill up with farmers, increasing your workforce to produce more goods. When each house is full enough, you can upgrade it to the next tier of worker, with a total of 5 tiers in the base game, perhaps more depending on how you look at it. Each tier requires the same basic needs as the tier immediately before it, and a whole bunch of new ones for you to create production lines for, and ensuring each house is close enough to certain buildings, such as a school or theatre, depending on that tier's needs. So how do you produce these goods that are the key to population growth? There are many raw materials and productions in the game, and some of these products have long production chains involving several different buildings and types of worker. Let me take you through the workloads production process in detail, because it's one of the simplest, but the other more elaborate production processes use ultimately the same theory, just with more stages added on. To start making workloads, you first need to produce wool. You lay down a sheep farm with fields, and provided you have enough farmers, they will begin to produce wool. Each production building needs a warehouse nearby, as when the product is ready, a little man will actually carry it from the farm to the warehouse. Once in the warehouse, the products go into a general pool that can be picked up again from any warehouse on that island. So now you have a bunch of wool. You need another building, a framework knitters, to turn that wool into workloads. Place that building, connect to the road, make sure a warehouse is near, and a guy will pop out, grab some wool from the nearest warehouse, take it back to the framework knitters, and begin to create workloads. You do need to consider how quickly the farm produces the wool and how quickly the frame knitters consumes it to ensure you have enough wool to meet demand. In this case, it's simple. Both buildings work at the same rate, but some production lines are rather more complex as you have multiple buildings with different processing times. You can produce more than you need of each product, just to be safe, but more buildings cost more money to maintain. Speaking of money, how do you make it? Broadly speaking, basic needs increase population and luxury needs increase how much tax each worker will pay. Clicking on each house will show you the basic and luxury needs and whether they're currently being met. Then you just need to get the production chain up and running in the same way you did for workers' clothes. There are also lifestyle needs that boost population even further, but those are somewhat optional. Producing enough basic and luxury goods is the main focus in Anno 1800. Population and production are interlinked and must grow together. But you must be careful when upgrading your population to the next tier. You will always need a certain number of farmers as the foundation of your economy. Creating a shortage of farmers by upgrading too many of them to the next tier will collapse your economy very quickly, as factories will run low on workers, reducing their output of goods. Less goods means less needs are met, workers will pay less tax, and some will leave altogether. Growing your economy requires you to balance your workforce from the ground up, ensuring that enough workers are available at each tier before and after upgrading. This makes planning ahead essential and financial firefighting a common occurrence as you try to figure out which part of your production has a bottleneck that's caused your tax revenue to drop. At first, managing all of this is rather easy. You just click on individual houses and factories to see what's required and to check everybody is happy. But soon you'll have literally thousands of workers producing many different products across multiple interlocking supply chains. Fortunately, Anno 1800 has a built-in tool that enables you to analyze all this data to help you identify bottlenecks. Here's a typical example of financial firefighting in Anno 1800. Your tax receipts have dropped dramatically and you're suddenly losing money. How do you identify and fix that problem? You can open your population menu, which groups workers by their type. You can go into each type of worker, view a list of all of the houses, and sort them by their happiness. If a bunch are unhappy, that's probably why your tax revenue has decreased. So you click on the unhappiest house and it will take you straight there. Look at their needs, and chances are you'll see that one need is not being met. Now you know which product is the issue, open the production menu. Grouped by product, you can see the rate of production compared to the rate of consumption, and you'll probably see that this product doesn't have enough production. This menu also lists each building that's creating that product, and you may see one is not working at 100% efficiency. Click it and you'll be taken straight to that factory, which may tell you it's lacking the raw materials it needs. Back to the production summary, find that raw material, and you can examine those factories or farms. If they are all running at 100% efficiency, then you'll just need to build another one to bring production up to meet demand. Congratulations, you located and fixed the bottleneck. And until you start thinking ahead, you'll be doing this a lot. Anno 1800 is much like building a house of cards, with raw materials and farmers at the bottom supporting the higher level production and workers above. And to grow the house of cards smoothly, you need to ensure there's enough support at the bottom before piling cards further up. But bear in mind, you're on an island. Space is limited, and there comes a point where building an extra couple of farms to remove a bottleneck isn't an easy option anymore. You can use blueprints to plan more efficient layouts before actually building them, and it's quite easy to shift buildings around even after they've been built. You'll definitely be researching the most efficient layouts of buildings to squeeze every inch of production out of them. You can even copy and paste entire town layouts when you have one you like. But eventually you'll hit a snag. You need to provide beer to your workers as a luxury need, but when you try to place a hops farm, the game tells you your island lacks the fertility. Bugger! So what's the answer? Load up a ship with supplies and sail around the map until you find a free island with hops fertility. And it's not just hops, there are many resources that can only be grown on specific islands. So claiming certain islands before others get there first is essential. You can't move the population you already have to another island, not until way later in the game. So setting up on a new island is much like setting up on the first, except you should have the resources to be able to do it more quickly, with ships ferrying materials over to the new island. Remember, although the hops will be delivered to the warehouse on that island, it's probably easier to process those hops back on your original island, where you've already got the infrastructure to do so. So how do you do that? Trade routes. You start churning out little ships, tell them which island to go to, what to pick up, how much, and where to drop it off. They'll just keep doing that until you tell them to stop. They'll constantly pick up the hops from one island and drop them off at the other so they can be used in the beer brewing process. You may then end up shipping some of the completed beer to another island to keep that population happy. More trade routes. Eventually you'll end up with a zillion trade routes that need to be tinkered with, and to be honest, that's one of my favourite parts of the game. Finally, before we move on from the detail of how the game works, we have the new world. Reaching the new world is an important part of the game as it's an entirely separate map containing new islands with different fertility, giving you access to new products. Some products will need to be shipped back and forth between the old world and the new to complete production chains that keep your higher level workers happy, but it's a race to get there and claim as much for yourself as possible. That, my friends, is the core of the game, and what you'll spend most of your time working towards in a game of Anno 1800. But there are many smaller elements that we'll race through now to complete the picture. For the military side of things, you can produce a few different types of ships, from small gunboats up to much bigger ships of the line. You can also build static defences in the water around your harbours. There's ship-to-ship combat, and to take over an island, you have to bombard the island's harbour buildings for long enough, and that's it. No ground troops whatsoever. There's not much diplomacy. You can declare war, have a trade agreement, and that sort of thing, but diplomacy is very basic, so we won't dwell on it. If your storage of a product is full, or you don't have enough of something, one option is to play around with the buying and selling limits of each product, so you automatically attempt to trade away excess stock to the AI or buy products to temporarily fill a production gap. You can also send ships on expeditions, which is basically a text adventure, where you make decisions and hope they go your way. If successful, you may get an animal that can go in your zoo, or something archaeological that could go in your museum that makes your island more appealing. Workers can ask you to help them with a small quest which might see you zooming into your city to look for alligators or finding someone's drunk husband who's in one of the pubs, basically an excuse to get you to zoom into your city and appreciate the detail. You can increase the rate at which workers work, effectively increasing their hours, a great way to increase productivity, but the higher you boost production, the more unhappy your workers will be. Each island has an attractiveness rating which decides how many tourists will come visit. More tourists means more money, which gives you a reason to keep pollution down, and your city's looking pretty. There's a posh guy that writes news articles about you. He'll report an explosion in a factory, reducing happiness among your citizens, but he'll report good stuff when that happens too. You can, however, choose to censor the bad news, but eventually there are consequences for doing so. Last but not least, before moving on, it's worth looking at buying shares in islands as a way of unleashing your economic might upon your competitors. At first, you own 100% of each island that you claim, but you'll notice that the ownership of each island is split into 5 chunks, and later in the game you can purchase a chunk of your competitors' islands for a price. Ultimately, what this does is you receive a bit of income from that island, and your competitor will receive a bit less income from it. Eventually, when you own all 5 chunks, you own the island. There is a cooldown timer on each island, so you can't just keep buying the 5 shares quickly, even if you have the money, and your competitor might buy those shares back, so a financial tug-of-war ensues. Finally, we need to acknowledge an element where this game simply excels. Anno 1800 may well be a glorified spreadsheet, but it smothers you in a delightful visual feast that feels like you're dunking your favourite biscuit into a warm mug of tea, all while the game whispers the soft notes of a masterful soundtrack, providing that delicate balance between upbeat background music and swelling encouragement when you finally provide your alcoholic farmers with enough schnapps to get them through the day. The first-person mode is the best way to lap up this audio-visual feast as you run and jump around the city you've created, walking between buildings, looking up at the skyscrapers, watching cats and dogs having a disagreement, and especially when your people celebrate in the streets simply because you're that freaking awesome to them. That's all well and good, but what about longevity? Will you be playing Anno 1800 in a year's time, and what about discounts? When's the best time to buy? And are the DLCs worth a look? Or just a money grab? Let's start with longevity. You should firstly bear in mind that Anno 1800 isn't about reaching the end of the game. It's about setting your own goals, balancing supply chains, efficient use of space, and making a big, beautiful profit. With that in mind, once you've completed the story, you probably won't feel the need to play it again. But after that, single-player sandbox versus the AI is where most of you will spend most of your time. Essentially the same as the campaign, but without the cutscenes. With thousands of maps to choose from, you're left to build and expand however you see fit. After that, there's a creative mode for those who just want to build pretty towns and cities without worrying about money or your workers going on strike. And there are separate scenarios, which are basically mini-campaigns with a variety of challenges, including different gameplay mechanics that keep things fresh for a time. But what about multiplayer? You can play with up to 15 friends across 4 teams, so Anno 1800 can be competitive as you race to establish your economy, build up your fleets, and throw your ships at each other. But given the wholesome and relaxing feel of the game, you're more likely to start up a chilled co-op game with a friend that might last for many hours over several sessions. Ultimately, the game is a time warp where you can easily spend 20 or 30 hours on one save, and a 5-hour session feels like 20 minutes. But even so, each game of Anno is broadly the same. So whether it's at the 100-hour or 1,000-hour mark, you're going to start thinking about DLCs. And as you can see from this list, there are many DLCs to choose from. But what do they contain, and are they any good? I can't cover all of the DLCs in this video, but here are the highlights to give you an idea of how you can expand your Anno 1800 experience. The Cosmetic Pack Bundle is great for city builders, really fleshing out your options, so you can create a city that's far less generic. It's too expensive at full price, but in a sale or part of a bundle, it's worth it if city building is your priority. Sunken Treasures adds a region called Trelawney, a big map and a huge island that you could never fill. There's a nice bit of story on how this new region fits in with the rest of the world, and across the whole world you can search for sunken treasure, which is pretty damn cool. At the other end of the spectrum is Botanica. It doesn't cost much, but it doesn't add much. A few nice looking buildings to increase the attractiveness of your city, that's kind of it. Land of Lions adds another new part of the world with its own population, products, and mechanics, which really freshens up and integrates well with the base game. I could go on, but as you can see, there is a wide spectrum of DLCs. Some small, adding a few cosmetics, but some genuinely big, expanding your options and ultimately providing far more longevity as long as you are happy to part with some more money. And on the subject of money, who pays full price for a game these days? Fortunately, if you're playing on PC, you won't have to wait long to see a 75% discount on the base game. So even if you desperately want to download it right now, it's probably worth waiting as the next sale is never far away. Although there are discounts on most DLCs, it's basically not worth buying them individually, as the season passes offer a bulk discount. For example, Season 1 at full price is £21, which provides you with 3 DLCs that together would normally cost a little over £29, a nice saving there, and it's the same theory for the other 3 season passes. Finally, looking on Steam, we have the Gold Edition of the game, which includes the Season 4 pass, basically the 3 latest DLCs, and last but not least, the Complete Edition includes all 4 season passes, basically all of the big expansions, but it's not that complete as it doesn't contain the cosmetic packs, of which there are many. Ultimately, Anno 1800 is many things, but is it right for you? As advertised, Anno 1800 is a city-building game, but to really flesh that side of the game out, you'll want to purchase some DLCs. It is, however, a very respectable resource and economy management game right out of the box, plus DLCs will expand it even further. If you're looking for deep military strategy, large battles, intense multiplayer, or complex diplomatic relations, they are not big factors in the game of Anno 1800. Realistically, most players will play this game alone in a dark room for hours on end, and a much smaller number will play a chilled co-op game with a friend. If you've been keeping your eye on Anno 1800 for a while, now is a good time to buy. It's a few years old now, so there are regular sales of the base game, and most important of all, you can pick up bundles of DLCs cheap, which can tailor the game more to your liking. Anno 1800 is also well suited to introducing new players to this strategy, city-building, eco-managing genre that us weird people rather like. So if you found your way here simply because the algorithm decided to have a bit of banter, Anno 1800 may well be worth you checking out, even if you've not played a strategy game before. If you do decide to buy the game, feel free to check out my quick start guide linked in the description, and let the rest of us know if you're enjoying the game in the comments below. If you did get value out of the video, please leave a like as it makes a huge difference growing the channel, and feel free to check out my other videos in case you find those useful too. See ya.